Hi, there we go. I'm on. Okay, the digital revolution is changing how we think about power, trust, and control. Blockchain, digital assets, and decentralized finance aren't just technologies. They're shifting the balance towards greater autonomy for individuals, communities, and nations. To explore this future, we're joined by Lorenzo De Leo of Rocker, Nina Bardi of AAB Digital Assets, Paolo Delani of Tumoni, and Dan Opre of 1A1Z. Together, they'll unpack how decentralization is reshaping global systems and redefining sovereignty in the digital age. Please join me in welcoming our closing panel.
Okay, so thank you so much again for being here. My name is Lorenzo. We're going to talk about decentralization today. We have a panel of amazing experts and speakers. But I wanted to get started by asking a quick question to the audience. How familiar are you with the concept of decentralization? Raise your hand. But not in theoretical terms. Well, in your case, it's easy. I know you. I know Esteban. Come on. But in practical terms. So not the theory of decentralized structures, but like real applications. So how many of you, for example, are self-custodying your digital assets? Or how many of you have been using like DeFi platforms, like lending and borrowing platforms, or cross-chain payments based on decentralized networks? Okay, some of them, the usual suspects. Okay, that's it, guys. So this panel is not for you. It's for everybody else who needs to learn about the importance of decentralizations and real-life applications. This is the goal of this panel, to really show you that decentralization is here, and we want to give you a few ideas of what it is and what it can be in the short term. So I want to just give you a quick intro. Why is this important? And at least this is my perspective. Decentralization is actually a very natural concept, but unfortunately, we live in a very centralized world. We've been used to live in a very centralized world for many years, for decades, or actually hundreds of years, which is much more complicated. So let me explain it with an example. If I send money today to my friend Esteban, or if I had to pay a bill, of course, in a centralized world, right? Of course, I had to use a bank, not only to process the transaction, but also to make sure that that transaction is real and legit. Meaning, if somebody in a day or a week or a month or a year asks, hey, did Lorenzo pay the bill? We need to go to the bank and say, hey, bank, did Lorenzo pay? And the bank is going to check out its ledger, right? And it's going to say, yes, it is actually true. The transaction was real. The transaction was legit. So what I'm saying here is that I completely rely on an institution, a centralized institution, a bank in this case, to validate that what I did is actually real, is actually legit. So the amount of trust is, I completely had to trust the bank. Like, if the bank makes a mistake or if the bank lies, right? I'm not saying anything happens, or maybe it does, it doesn't matter, but the point is, I blindly trust the bank. I don't have an option, right? And on top of that, because of the way this is designed, in order to protect the ledger, the bank needs to build like a very complicated and expensive infrastructure, because you don't want anybody else to have access to that ledger, because otherwise they could change that ledger, right? And so maybe somebody, even if I paid that bill, somebody could change the ledger and say, no, Lorenzo didn't pay, right? So this is clearly a very artificial, infrastructure that has been getting more and more complicated over the years just because of the way it is designed. Now, in a decentralized world, the same transaction, the same payment, right, would rely on a decentralized network, which means that now I have dozens or hundreds or thousands or millions of people / computers / nodes recording that information and having access to that information on a distributed ledger, which means that now if somebody asks, hey, did Lorenzo actually pay? I don't rely on one single, point of fail or entity, right, to confirm that. I have a whole network that can actually validate and say, yes, it happened. And so it's a matter of transparency, it's a matter of security, and if you think about it, it's just a matter of simplicity. So this is why I'm very passionate about this topic, and this is why I'm very happy of being here on this stage and having, these great experts that are going to show you real life examples of what I just described in somehow high level terms, showing you that this is already happening. So we have Nina, who's going to show us how governments can actually embrace decentralization. We have Dan, who's going to tell us why Bitcoin is the master of decentralization. And we have Paulo, who is going to talk about his experience with remittances and cross-border payments. So I'm going to start with Nina, and I'm going to actually read the first question, because I want to screw it up, because it's a very nice question, and we work hard to write this question.
You never screw it up.
When a national government like El Salvador chooses a decentralized path, what does that actually mean in simple terms? And it sounds like a paradox for a government, right, to embrace decentralization over the traditional centralized approach that most governments take. So can you give us a concrete example from your work that makes this tangible?
Okay, it's a very nice question and a very interesting one too. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here and for inviting us here to share our experiences. We're not experts. We're just trying day by day to learn something new, and we choose to make the next step for an evolution of financial systems. So this is why I don't see it like a paradox. It's more a complement. We see it that way because we have in Latin America many unbanked people. They don't have access to any opportunity, financially speaking, and they don't have access to financial inclusion. So for us, it was a way to support all those people. That is, our country has the majority of them is part of our country, we cannot forget them. So as a member of the government and working with them and choosing public service, when you choose that, you need to serve public. So that's the way it is, it should be. So this is why we choose that path, and we found out that digital assets and Bitcoin especially would help a lot these people to improve their financial situation on a daily basis. Because that's the issue in reality. It's not the big enterprise that has the compliance part already done or resolved. It is the one that person that has $1 a day, for example, selling tortillas to feed their families, they have a really issue on payments daily, especially when you become a country where you receive many tourists from around the world. So they are, for example, going out for fishing and having the catch of the day and wanted to sell it freshly in the beach, and they don't have access to that payment because the tourist maybe has a wallet and doesn't have cash. And the fisherman, he doesn't know how to receive that payment because he doesn't have a financial inclusion. So that's one of the examples that is very tangible. And I think and I believe that after 3 years that we are doing this, we have a very nice experience and we have incredible achievements with normal people, day by day.
This is fascinating because it actually reinforces what I was saying, which is the simplicity of this model. Like it's like going back to like how things should be designed, from kind of like a natural perspective. So this, thank you, because this really explains that. I'm gonna come back to you because I want to hear more about your story. But I'm gonna quickly switch to Dan. Can you give us some, tangible examples of how Bitcoin's decentralization is already working today?
Sure. Yeah, thank you very much for having me, and great to see everyone. So yeah, Lorenzo, you opened with an example about trusting a single bank, and let's imagine that that bank is perfectly trustworthy, and sending payments within that bank is perfect. And even sending payments between banks in the same domestic country, many countries now have real-time payments. Let's assume that's all perfect. Getting money across borders, and you'll touch on remittances as well, I think is the most exciting application of decentralized technologies, and particularly in Bitcoin. Because right now, today, a combination of the SWIFT system and correspondent banking, where you're having to do all these hops to move money between different banks in different countries, where you often don't know where that money is even, or how long it's going to take to get there, and the enormous fees that are involved in that are huge. So in that is where something decentralized can add a lot of value. And decentralization doesn't mean much to most people, but neutrality perhaps does, right? So one company cannot create the global payments network that everyone's going to trust to use. Companies have tried. Facebook, Meta tried with Libra and DM to create this global consortium of payments that everyone could trust. But ultimately, it's still a handful of companies, particularly in the US, where the US will still have outsized control, which is also a large issue these days. So actually having something neutral that everybody can use, that they don't all have to sit around in the same room and sign up for and agree on what they're going to build and design ahead of time and take decades to do it, something that's already out there, already exists, and doesn't require the permission of any central entity. And Bitcoin is by far and away the most decentralized. I would argue the actual only decentralized of any of the cryptos or digital assets. And that enables companies and countries like El Salvador, like Guatemala, to plug in freely and participate in a global economy where money can move across borders as it does domestically. And so there's many great examples, particularly in Guatemala, of remittance companies. We're investors in SAF.money, SAF.money, who are enabling the off-ramps here so that companies in the US can onboard fiat if you want to send dollars to Guatemala, receive quetzales here. The user doesn't need to know or care that Bitcoin is being used behind the scenes. Just get a virtual bank account, move dollars in, the quetzales appears in your bank account in Guatemala. Behind the scenes, they're enabling to go into Bitcoin across the Lightning Network and back out. But again, the user just sees dollars and quetzales and instant money movement across border as if by magic. So that's a great example of a real-world instant, so much cheaper than the current methods today.
Beautiful. Paulo, he's been kind of like somehow covering your area of expertise. Is there anything that you would like to add in terms of like how decentralization can be applied to cross-border payments and remittances?
Maybe the black sheep here, because we actually don't leverage decentralized rails. Our thesis is actually more on hyper-centralizing the user experience on the platform. So there's different ways or different forms of decentralization. My co-panelists know this a lot better than I do. I'm not an expert in the topic. But you can decentralize a ledger while re-centralizing maybe the liquidity, or you can decentralize governance while centralizing the economics, for example. And ultimately for us, it's really about making sure you're more than centralizing, disintermediating, or more than decentralizing, disintermediating, so that you can put money back in the pockets of users. So our specific use case, and if we think about remittances, through a centralized network, on the US side, what you would have to do is that, as you explained it clearly, you would have to fund a digital payment method somehow. Then it would flow internationally through a decentralized network in this case and be paid out here. And then there would be an off-ramp domestically that allows you to then pay out those funds to the recipient, and most likely an FX component. So it's definitely, I completely agree, much better than what was there before in the sense of SWIFT and correspondent banking and the traditional providers. And it's an improvement of what we've been using for the last 100 years or so. But our thesis is more on trying to kind of go full circle, and after decentralization to go through hyper-centralization again, for the sake of, instead of making it 40 or 50% cheaper to move money from one country to another, to make it completely free. And in our case with Money, what we do is we bank the sender. In most cases on the US Central America corridor, about 80% of these funds are moved in cash in and cash out, because most people are unbanked, as Nina was saying. So it's actually tough, and it adds friction if you're trying to onboard them on a more complex instruments than they're already familiar with. So the idea here is to open an account on one side, open an account on the recipient, and then it's just an internal book ledger. There's no need to go through another daisy chain of intermediaries. So that's kind of our focus. Also being objective, it's not as scalable from day one as decentralized networks. So that's something that's also very clear for us. We can work very well and make it free, completely free to move money cross-border in 1 corridor, in 2 corridors, in 3 corridors. But if you want to do this globally, it's something that's going to take a bit of time for sure.
Yeah, if I can just add to that, not everything needs to be decentralized, right? Decentralized isn't necessarily better. There are certainly areas where actually centralization makes more sense. So only decentralize what you need to.
And I guess this is a great takeaway of this panel. It was a little bit of a surprise, actually, Paulo, when you shared this, when we were preparing for this panel. We were like, wait a minute, so why are you here? But it actually adds a lot of, sorry, I'm joking, of course, but like, it adds a lot of depth, right, to the conversation, because this is not a white or black situation or 0-1 situation, right? We have options, and it's a matter of finding out what are the right options for the right, audience, the right purpose, the right user. Right? And so this is a great example of how one needs to be intelligent about it. And in your case, you guys did go full in. And so I actually want to go back to Nina and really dig into the reasons why you ended up making this choice, right? So how did El Salvador get here? What were the core reasons for choosing this route?
Well, for us, it was, as I mentioned before, it was the financial inclusion. That's the first thing. Because through financial inclusion, you can move forward then the microeconomics of a country. It's not on the opposite way. In microeconomical part, you can see the very top of economics of the country, but they don't include the bases. And the bases are the ones that moves the microeconomics to spin up those part. So that part. So this is why we were moved from the traditional way, and not from, because we complemented it, as I mentioned. So that was the primary reason. And then we moved forward and based the treasury, the national treasury too, and took a very difficult decision that was very criticized at the beginning, but now it is very applauded around the world after 3 years, to set up Bitcoin as a legal tender. Mm-hmm. Nobody else did it. Well, it was another example around the world. I won't mention it, but they moved away from that at the end. But we choose to move forward on that, and now we have a big Bitcoin treasury. I think for us is something that we have to be very proud, because it's based on no debt, and we have raised up almost $800 million as a fresh reserve for El Salvador, and that is something that is moving through people. On a daily basis. And you can see it in small towns like Bitcoin Beach, for example, where you can see right now that they have water systems, they have electricity, they finally have roads and good houses. So you can see the reflection of that every day in the country. And that is nice. That is nice. We have also educational programs to move forward on that for small children in public schools. Everyone has, well, we receive help from around the world too, and we are very grateful of that. But they have also a computer right now. They have access to an iPad or a tablet where they can study. They have access to internet. Small children of 5, 6, 7 years old that are studying right now decentralization, blockchain, Bitcoin uses on a daily basis, how to use a wallet and how to use your cell phone as a payment platform. So that is amazing.
That is amazing, and it's fascinating, and It requires bold decisions, bold moves. So congrats. I just want to quickly check on time. Is it true that we only have 6 minutes left? 6. Okay. So enough with the present. Let's talk about the future. And I'm going to ask you, I guess, as a last question, given the time, I would like to know from each one of you, what is that thing that you are either excited about, that you think is going to happen, or that you're expecting to happen, or that you wish is going to happen? Like, let's, think a little bit about what to expect in terms of the upcoming future. It can be short term, it can be long term, but I would like you guys to picture like a decentralized world and the way you envision it. And maybe we can start with Dan, and then we move this way.
Sure. I think, again, the most exciting area for me is money and payments, and remittance is a great use case. I don't think the world is going to jump tomorrow to denominating things in supermarkets in Bitcoin and people going in and paying with Bitcoin directly. There are great examples of that in local areas. But for me, the most exciting sort of next stage is that sort of Bitcoin as a settlement rail behind the scenes piece. So as I mentioned in the previous example, people will still want to move fiat currency around. That's not going to go away yet, hopefully one day, but probably not soon. But actually just using Bitcoin behind the scenes, having traditional companies, having to money added as a potential option for rails behind the scenes without your users needing to know or care that Bitcoin is being used. Starting to see large banks who are now in the US are finally allowed to participate with Bitcoin, particularly with custody, and start to integrate Bitcoin services as cashback on their credit cards to get it into the hands of more normal people over time. So I think there'll be this incremental step from the world that we currently have to more availability of Bitcoin in more places through non-Bitcoin companies, through traditional financial institutions, through other companies that will be able to leverage it. Rather than today is kind of Bitcoin is, making Bitcoin companies for Bitcoiners and everyone else just buying an ETF and waiting for the number to go up. So that behind the scenes integration of Bitcoin, where it's actually going to be moving large quantities of money and perhaps no one even realizes.
Back to my concept of simplicity.
Yes.
Simple things in many
Abstract
cases
it all away.
are the best ones. Amazing. Paulo.
I think just thinking about it from the perspective of like the global south and especially the cross-border space, what I would hope to see in the future is just no matter what the platform is or the payment instrument or whether it's Bitcoin or local closed loops, just to make sure that we can make payments as efficiently as possible to pull people into the financial ecosystem. Right now, there's still so much financial exclusion, and people always relied on intermediaries. And this is not financial inclusion. It's financial exclusion with an additional price tag. So it just makes it more complicated, and it puts more barriers for people to just save more efficiently, invest more efficiently, and then just better their lives and those of their communities. So I think no matter how it happens, I think the important part is just to keep in mind that all of us are trying to do the same thing, and it's just to give access to the digital economy to as many people as possible.
Interesting. Nina, your turn, and I will also add, on top of describing the future, also help us understand, in your opinion, what it's going to take to get there. So, draw the painting and then also tell us, okay, how do we get there?
Okay. Well, as I see it first, I would love to see the rest of nations that first Latin America, we're Latinos, so this is the first step that we would love to take for all the people of this region to be included financially soon. That's one of the things that I would be hoping right now. They have the example here. We're a small country, but we are trying to achieve something else. I don't say that we have the perfect formula. We don't have it. We are learning every day. But every mistake we make is an opportunity to change and to improve. It's because nothing is written on rock. We're the first ones and moving forward. But I would love to see in the near future also big payments / investments, for example, to arrive to a country without this barrier of traditional finance. I am a financial professional, that's my background. But it's very, very difficult for a big company, for example, or somebody, private person, to invest big amounts in education. If they want to help in education, they don't have access to move more than $20 million at once, and that's small for a country. So I would love to enhance that soon to something bigger so we can invest in reality in big programs for moving forward on this path.
So is it a matter, and this is a question for everybody, pick one: education, regulation, time.
Exactly.
What do you think? What is the main ingredient here to make that future closer to us?
I think it's mostly time now. I think there's always going to be more education needed, particularly for large enterprises and financial institutions. But the mainstreaming of Bitcoin now, it's on Bloomberg every day, and they hear about it. It's not this weird, crazy thing anymore. It's something normal that companies are allowed to participate in. BlackRock, touch Bitcoin. So I think it is just time now. The infrastructure is there, the regulation is there in most countries, pioneered by El Salvador, and so I think it is just a matter of time at this point.
All right, we can sit down and relax. Paolo, what do you think?
I would say it's a user-facing onboarding efficiency. No matter what rails we're using, making it easy for people to transition from cash to whatever is better. Just because once they're there, people get used to the idea of digital money very quickly, but making the shift is the hard part. So the easier we can make it for people, whereas it's regulation, better products, better rails, the better we're all going to be.
I think digital ID helps a lot on that, on onboarding. We have it right now, and is functioning very well for everyone of El Salvador around the globe. You can have access to your birth certificate, to everything from a new company that you want to create in one day to apostille, whatever document you need. And also the digital ID that makes the proof of identity for the onboarding process. That makes it very, very fast.
Nina and Paolo, then thank you so much. We would like to keep going, but we're going to get in trouble. I hope you guys had a chance to see some examples of what is possible today, and hopefully we get you a little bit inspired. There's a lot to do, time and effort to be invested, but the future is closer than what we think, so thank you everybody for being here.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.